When I first came out,
But I like ladies and I like guys.
I read all the gay books I could find in the library, and I started collecting these obscure lesbian movies. And while a lot of them hold a special place in my heart to this day, I also kind of think that the good ones are far and few in between. And there are a lot of tropes, especially in the 90s and the noughts, that I am glad are dying out.
However,
Unfortunately, there are still a few that stuck around that I wish we would outgrow.
Pisces!
So I am counting down my top 10. Number 10.
I hate men, but I'm not a lesbian.
Time to learn one of my favorite words.
Ithiphallophobia.
The fear of an erect penis. This one is really simple. I think it's childish. Grown-ass people being like, "Yeah!" over the mere thought of someone else's genitals. You know you can find something not appealing and still not say it out loud. Lesbians hating everything about men also bothers me, because the reason they give is always that the lesbian is a lesbian, and there are plenty of reasons to hate men that has nothing to do with not finding them attractive. So when stories link the man-hating to the lesbianism, it makes it seem like the only reason a woman likes other women is because she's attracted to them. That sucks. Number 9.
Grace, did you know I was gay when you met me?
My dog knew.
Now this one generally bothers me because you can never know that about someone else. But I particularly hate it when it's linked to clothes and hair or even mannerisms. When queer people have similar aesthetics, it's because people of similar cultural groups have similar aesthetics. So do bankers or people who listen to heavy metal or even people who just live in the same country. So while many queer aesthetics work as signifiers to let other people know that you're queer, they're also just trends within a certain social group. And trends get picked up by people who just, think they're neat. You also can't assume that people went to a certain university just because they wear one of the shirts. I completely understand suspecting someone might be gay from the way they behave, but the way they look, no. It also gets done in reverse, where someone is surprised when a person comes out because they don't look gay.
I'm gay.
And there is no logical reason why you would like certain aesthetics just because you're queer. Number 8.
as a man and not a woman.
Now this one is kind of a foreshadowing of one of the top spots. I despise when women, especially groups of women, talk about other women the way straight men do. When lesbians are written just like straight men, only with the pronouns changed. And yes, different strokes to different folks, but in my experience, the things a woman finds attractive about another woman, even on a surface level, are not the same things that a straight man finds attractive. And that goes for the way they write sex too, and sometimes it just doesn't even make logical sense. Often when a woman is supposed to be a player, it's written the exact same way you would a man who's a player. And those two things are just not directly comparable. Sex between two cis women is really difficult to make one-sided to your own advantage, unless you straddle her thigh and hump her. So while a cis man can be 100% selfish in sex, that's very rarely how it goes in lesbian stories. Take Shane from the L Word. She's almost always the one giving in her scenes, but she's still framed as being a selfish player the way similar types are in straight stories. But there is something distinctively less selfish about giving someone a satisfying sexual experience and then never calling them back, and then being completely selfish with sex and never calling them back. So while a woman can still be selfish and manipulative and exploitative in her sexual encounters, there are nuances that gets lost because these scenes are written just like they are when the player is a man. Number 7.
You clean, you cook, and once a week we lie together as husband and wife.
This is about inferring stereotypical man behavior from a masculine aesthetic and stereotypical woman behavior from a feminine aesthetic. The masked one does the car repairs, kills the spider, and lift heavy things.
We get the picture. Ms. Bishop was the primary caregiver, Ms. Winslow, the breadwinner.
Rather traditional arrangement we're all familiar with.
Can we not? It doesn't even make sense for straight couples. It makes me even more annoyed when it bleeds into personality. The masked one is the tough one, and the feminine one is the sensitive one. Because it's bullshit. I want to see big, strong masks who are sensitive and adorable. Number 6.
His word said no, but his kiss said yes.
Now, I generally have a problem with how often a kiss is non-consensual in TV and movies. I'm really not a fan of how the "I'm gonna grab your face and kiss you" is framed as romantic and passionate. I would personally hate to have my first kiss with someone be like that, because it kind of takes away that person's choice, and the consent is always implied in the narrative, but in real life, that shit would be uncomfortable. And it weirdly gets done a lot in gay and lesbian stories, often to prove to someone that they're gay. And that's not how that works.
Yeah, that's not how it works.
I might just be speaking for myself here, but there's no difference between kissing a person of a gender you're attracted to and a person of the gender you're not, if the person is not someone you want to kiss.
Yep. Definitely straight.
And it bothers me how often the kiss is sudden and forced upon the person being kissed. Number 5.
So I just say it?
A closed mouth don't get fed.
Now, this is also a general pet peeve of mine. I am so sick of seeing two people who have never talked about sex with each other and never been together jump into bed and having an amazing time on the first try. And this gets done a lot in the lesbian stories. 90% of the sex scenes in the L Word are done like this. And I know that for many lesbians, being with a woman for the first time was a really big contrast to being with men. But it's not like a magic solution. Sex is not intuitively amazing just because you've never been with a woman before. And it's not that hard to throw in a few "how does that feel" and "what do you like" here and there. It seems to stem from the idea that because you're a woman yourself, you know how it works. But bodies are just way too different for that to be true. I want to see open and vulnerable and honest communication about sex.
Good, so fucking left. Okay. All right, now make circles or something. Circles are good. Circles. Oh yeah. Okay, bigger circles. Bigger. Okay, not that big. No. Okay. No. Now you know. All right. You know what?
It's not unromantic that you don't know how to satisfy your partner without even asking. Love does not magically make your partner come. Number 4.
That is so ignorant. You don't become a lesbian.
Now, this one comes in many forms. One is explicitly, with the characters actually using the term gold star lesbian. The second one is implicitly, with the writing insinuating that coming out early and thus never sleeping with or dating men is somehow an indicator of how gay you are. Even the word indicates that a lesbian who has never been with a man is a lesbian who behaved right, earned her gold star, made no mistakes. And with stuff like compulsive heterosexuality, the stigma of being LGBTQ, the threat of violence and being disowned by your family, holding it against someone when they came out is kind of I'll get back to the nuances of finding out when you're already in a relationship with a man. But for now, suffice it to say, defining lesbianism by not sleeping with men puts men at the center of the conversation. A conversation that should be about women loving women. You don't define your romantic relationships by all the people you didn't fall in love with, or your career by all the places you never worked. And men get center stage in so many areas. Could we maybe not give them that in lesbianism? Before we move into the top 3, I want to make a quick little detour and a word about the role of the viewer. Now, biphobia seems to be dying out, but not fast enough.
You just won't die, will you?
But it's worth to keep in mind why it's so problematic and why the examples we've seen are still worth talking about. We don't have to go back very far to see biphobia reflected completely uncritically. Just watch Sex and the City or Will and Grace, both shows that were praised for being sexually progressive.
It's not hot, it's greedy. He's double dipping.
We have seen the cliches of bisexuals being more promiscuous and more likely to cheat, or even bisexuality not being recognized as a real thing.
Pansexual? Isn't that just a rest stop on the highway to homo?
Those have been talked about at length. I'm not going to dive too far into that. What I do want to talk about is our attitude to the bi people in the things we watch. The fact that people are disappointed when a bi woman ends up with a man. It somehow makes her less queer. If we switch gender, I remember being disappointed when Daryl from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend ended up with a woman. It somehow counts less as representation in our eyes. And while I love seeing same-sex couples, we also need to see bi people being bi. Number 3.
Doubly masculine.
Now this is one of the things that the L-Word Generation Q did right. In season 3, the character Carrie meets another woman, Misty, and they have obvious chemistry and eventually end up together. And they're both masks. The script is even somewhat aware of this, and Misty points out that she's not used to being pursued. And we see two masks together so rarely in movies and TV. And it doesn't make sense because they're out there in the real world. And our stories should reflect that. We see femme-femme pairings all the time. It's probably the most common one. And there are mask-femme pairings as well. But mask-mask? I can think of way too few. And I want to see them. I love a good mask. And Carrie and Misty are one of the cutest couple on Generation Q. So, you know, give me more of that. Number 2.
Hot lesbians.
To be honest, this one really calls for more knowledge of cinematography and filmmaking than I have, but it still deserves a spot on the list because it's an echo of something I mentioned earlier. We have to stop taking straight men's opinion into account when we tell lesbian stories. We have to stop filming sex scenes the way the men want to see them. And yes, people are different in what they find erotic, but there's a reason why adult movies made for queer women by queer women look different than when it's made for straight men. A really good example of this is the difference between the sex scenes in BBC's Fingersmith and the Japanese movie The Handmaiden. It's a good example because it's two adaptations of the same story. They're both based on Sarah Waters' book The Fingersmith. The BBC one sticks much closer to the original. In the BBC adaptation, the focus during the sex scene is on their faces, their reactions, their kisses and their breath. It's still explicitly sexual, but like in the book, it's about how they both feel about the experience. And when you contrast that to The Handmaiden, where the sex scenes look like this, you know, I'm all for seeing naked women be naked together. Just, you know, hire a queer director for at least those scenes. And hire an intimacy coordinator. Please. So what could be worse than the male gaze? Well, this is my list, and I think this one is worse.
It's not like cheating, cheating's wrong.
I am so sick of stories where a married woman, a woman in a relationship with a man, meets another woman, falls in love, and then cheats on him. I know that Imagine Me and You is a classic for many queer women, but I haven't rewatched it since its release for this reason. There are a few exceptions that I will get back to, but as a general rule, I would be fine if I never saw a story like this again. Because it's always justified by the love, and I don't buy it. I don't care how hard and deep you fall. If you cheat on your partner, you're a bag. Why does one of the women have to do something unethical? And why is it always justified? There are so many other ways of writing a, oh, we can't be together story than that. So many ways to get the longing glances at each other thing to work. Just look at what the gays are doing. Red, white, and royal blue, or young royals, just to mention a few. Make it a Romeo and Juliet, or Juliet and Juliet, where the cultural backgrounds is the thing that keeps them apart. Anything other than the cheating. And the guy she cheats on is always portrayed as either a stumbling fool or a shitty partner to justify it. Often he gets a new girlfriend shoot in at the last minute so we don't have to feel too bad for him. And I hate it. I don't think cheating is romantic, even if the one you're cheating with is the love of your life. And queer women deserve better stories where they're not made the villain just because they found love. The exception, of course, is when the story takes place in a different historical time, where women didn't have a choice whether to marry or not. Where you either married a man or, starved.
Cake or death? Cake, please.
Where divorce was not an option, socially or legally. Where you would literally be killed if you were found to be with a woman. That makes the situation completely different. And by all means, keep telling those stories. Because the awareness of that time in history, i.e. most of history, is still important. But today, when a woman has the choice to, remain single if she's not ready to come out, and where you can, leave your partner if you find out you're gay, I just don't want to see it. I want to see strong, courageous women who are ready to let go of the security blanket that is their relationship when they realize they love someone else. And I want to see them leave their partner without knowing in advance whether they have a chance or whether they will end up alone. Because I think that's romantic and strong and courageous. And it puts these women in a good light instead of a bad one. And like I said, queer women deserve that.
Aloha, auf Wiedersehen, bonsoir, sayonara, and all those goodbye things.